The wind-driven fires of 1988 left a mosaic of green and black patches in the forests of Yellowstone. Depending upon the extent of the fires, some places looked like green islands in a sea of black trees, while others looked like black tar on a green carpet. After a fire, burned areas in some places quickly burst into life. In fact, when the ground is still warm from the fire, ants, wood beetles, millipedes, and centipedes are busy. Fire beetles actually seek out fire to breed and lay their eggs in charred logs. The first plants that appear are those whose roots and seeds were there before the fire. But soon, new seeds are carried in by the wind and on the fur of animals or in their droppings. But in other areas where the fire has been too intense, completely burned areas may take years to return to full life. The green and black mosaic favors newly arrived plants and animals. Hawks and owls hunt for food in the opened spaces. Tree-drilling woodpeckers hunt for insects beneath the bark of fallen trees. The dead trees also make good nesting sites. Bluebirds and tree swallows move in. The fields of new grasses and wildflowers attract grazing animals, and birds come from all over to catch insects in the meadows. If you watch the movie Bambi, you might think that deer and other animals panic and flee in all directions from rapidly approaching flames. But that is not really what happens. Fires often move slowly through forests and grasslands. Larger animals, such as bears, elk, bison, moose, and deer, simply walk away from the fire. Bison and elk graze as usual, sometimes on the flaming edges of the fire. Elk even step over fiery logs to get at patches of unburned grass. The animals that are affected die mostly from smoke inhalation rather than from the flames. Fires rarely start during the wet spring breeding season, so nests of fledglings are not often threatened, and at other times of year, mature birds can fly off in advance of a fire. Rodents and other small animals dash away across fields or seek shelter in underground burrows or in rocky places. Bears, coyotes, foxes, hawks, falcons, and ravens feast on animals driven from their burrows or on the bodies of animals killed by the smoke. For these scavengers, fire offers many sources of food. Nature quickly adjusts to changes and finds new life, even in death. The forests of Yellowstone are mostly lodgepole pine trees. Many of the lodgepoles were several hundred years old at the time of the 1988 fire. As a lodgepole ages, it doesn't produce enough resin, or sap, to stop insects from boring into its bark, which eventually kills the tree. In very old lodgepole forests, many of the standing trees are dead. Fires remove these dead trees, making room for new ones. Fires also help the lodgepole reproduce. This tree has two kinds of cones. One opens naturally over time, and its winged seeds whirl to the forest floor. That is how lodgepoles usually sprout. The other kind of seed is sealed in a rock-hard pine resin that opens only when the heat of a fire melts and burns away the resin. Following the Yellowstone fires, seed counts in burned lodgepole stands were very high, ranging from 50,000 to 1 million seeds per acre. All had come from sealed pine cones that were opened by the fire. Most of these seeds would be eaten by chipmunks, squirrels, birds, and other small animals, but some seeds would sprout, starting a new cycle of life in the forest. Just 2 years after the 1988 fires, burned areas had sprouted new plants of all kinds. The pink flowers of fireweed soon appeared. Asters, lupines, and dozens of other kinds of plants grew among the burned trees. Insects returned in great numbers and began to feast on the plants. In turn, the insects became food for birds and other insect eaters. Elk and bison grazed on the plants. Chipmunks gathered seeds and small rodents built nests in the grasses. The young lodgepole pines are now waist-high, and many different kinds of plants surround them. Before the fire, The towering older trees blocked sunlight from the forest floor, allowing only a few other species of plants to flourish there. Without periodic fires, low-growing plants that have survived in the park for thousands of years would die off completely. In 50 to 100 years, the lodgepoles will again be tall enough to deprive other plant species of the light they need to grow. The forest will become mostly pines. Then the fires are likely to return, and the cycle of burning and rebirth will continue. These firefighters are not trying to put out a fire. Instead, they started this fire and are letting it burn. Using a device called a drip torch, firefighters set small blazes on purpose to prevent large-scale forest fires by burning away undergrowth and dead wood. Many forests and grasslands in North America are dependent on fire to thin out old, dying trees and other plants. For many years, the main focus of fire prevention has been to put out natural fires as soon as possible. But the longer the fuel builds up in a forest, the worse the fire is going to be, and the more likely it will be to burn out of control. So fire is now actually being put to use. Florida, for example, burns more than 1 million acres of grasslands a year. In that state, the new slogan is, "Using fires wisely prevents forest fires." Everglades National Park is part of a vast sea of sawgrass that covers 4,000 square miles in southern Florida. The glades are home for many wading birds, as well as for turtles and alligators. During the summer's rainy season, sawgrass fires often start because of lightning. The fires burn the parts of the plant above the water, and the ashes provide minerals for new growth. Without periodic fires, the sawgrass would age, die, and decay, filling up the swamps. The Everglades need fires in order to survive. Lightning fires in the glades are permitted to burn, except during droughts. Fire crews also burn sawgrass along the park boundaries, thus preventing larger fires in dry years. More than a quarter of a century after the fires of 1988, Yellowstone is still renewing itself. Burned trees are losing their blackened bark and turning a silvery gray. Meadows are growing around them. The burned areas are slowly fading away. Meanwhile, scientists still have a lot to learn about what happens to a forest after a huge fire. One question they ask: how often does an area burn naturally? The time between natural fires varies, depending upon climate and tree life. In Yellowstone's lodgepole pine forests, the interval between large natural fires is 300 to 400 years. In Florida's slash pines, the interval is only 7 years, and it is as short as 2 to 5 years in the open ponderosa forests of northern Arizona. In the cedar spruce forests of western Washington state, 2,000 years can pass between fires. Wildfires are neither good nor bad. In forests and grasslands, they are part of the endless cycle of change.